Folsom Lake to Lake Tahoe, your backyard, where freedom grows. Oh, tall and strong as a cedar trees, it's liberty in EDC.
Hey everybody, welcome to Liberty in EDC. I'm here with Tamara Janies, and she is from the El Dorado Mobile Home Owners Coalition. So she's going to tell us about what's going on in our mobile home parks here in El Dorado County and how our people who are living there are basically being ran out of their homes for the most part. But first, let's get to know you a little bit better. So,
Hi.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. I went to a meeting in March of 2017, sat in a large audience over at the American Legion Hall, and two things got my attention.
What was the meeting?
It was a meeting to talk about space rent stabilization for El Dorado County. And two of the comments are what got me here today and what made me become chair. The first one was they can raise your rent every 90 days with a 90-day notice. The second one was with every increase, appraiser's rule of thumb, $100, we lose $10,000 in equity. Those two statements made me realize that I had to do something now to protect my home and to protect the home for others in El Dorado County. Because we have some parks that are already seeing the national trend and the business model that's used by the predatory LLCs. It's already being used in our county. And we're already seeing people lose some homes that sold last year for $149,000 in one of these parks in particular, where they've seen over an 18% increase in 13 months.
18% increase in their
space rent, as well as most mobile home parks previously used to include water, trash, and sewer. It was automatic. Now that's being removed. So now we're being billed by the park. We still don't get control of our utilities. The park still keeps control of them, but now they're billing them.
Oh, wow.
Billing us. Purpose in that is, not with all utilities, but with many of the utilities, they get a kickback.
Oh, from who they're
PG&E
going with.
pays all the parks 15% per resident in their park. And this is supposed to be to maintain infrastructure inside the parks.
Okay. I mean, that sounds like it makes sense.
Right, except for ask me if any of the maintenance is being done.
Oh, but that's
They're
not good.
collecting the 15%, but it's not being used
For
for the
maintenance.
purpose it was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So basically, it's just a 15% cherry on the top for the park. And so that's some of the reasons I got involved in this. And that's what made me realize that we have to do something.
Now, did this organization exist before you became the chair?
It existed they were just in the point of forming. And the person who was kind of taking my position at the time, she was president of GSMOL, which is the Golden State Mobile Home Owners League. This is actually the state organization that represents mobile home residents for California. She was president. She thought that that would be a conflict of interest, so they had a second meeting after the American Legion Hall at Crestview Mobile Home Park, and I attended. And she basically looked around the room and said, somebody else needs to take the chair position. I cannot do it, Tamra. And that's how I ended up in the chair position, which I'm actually excited about because I think we've made a lot of progress in the last, I don't know, year and a half.
So how long have you been chair for?
I have been chair since, I think about September of 2018, somewhere around there. I've actually been on paper chair longer than that, but because of how much experience this other person had against my experience just coming into the situation, I kind of took a back seat to that a little bit and let her take the lead. But then she had some illness issues, some medical condition problems that she had to take care of. And she stepped aside from the state organization as well as our organization. And that's truly when I jumped into the trenches as the true chair.
Oh, okay.
And then I started using some of the connections I had made in the county. I have been a El Dorado County Democrat for the last 5 years. And the organization decided to rally behind me. And then through that organization, the El Dorado Progressives came involved. We have reached out to the Republicans, but as of this time, we just haven't made a contact. But we're absolutely interested in speaking to any organization. We've spoken to the Lions Club. We did an affordable housing panel town hall recently with the El Dorado Progressives and the Democrats. So we speak whenever we get a chance in public to people about this so that we can let the public know how important this is and how many seniors. My neighbor had to get rid of his comp insurance on his vehicle. He had a new vehicle, but because he had originally moved into our park at a certain rate, once things started to increase, Social Security only goes up about 2.8% a year. Any increase in rent generally is well over 2.8%. He just came to me one day and said, I no longer can afford comp on my car. I spoke to another resident who, by the time they were done paying for everything, they had $14 a month left over. I started realizing, I mean, we know the economy is very tight for the lower income right now. But then you add this situation where these companies have targeted mobile homes.
Yeah.
John Oliver had a show April 7th of this year where he spoke for 20 minutes about what's going on with the industry across the country. It's affecting 22 million people. It is happening from New York to California and in every state.
Yeah, you sent that to me, and that was shocking.
Wasn't that shocking?
Yeah, and we'll probably run a link, address to the link so our viewers at home could check that out. But yeah, it's definitely a worthwhile watch.
Absolutely. And whenever I send that to anyone, legislators included, they're taken aback by that because they actually have a mobile home university where you pay $2,000 to learn how to buy a mobile home park and how to take advantage of the captive mobile home residents. And that's what John Oliver really brought to light in that particular show. And then Time Magazine in 2007, December 18th, they did a big article talking about how mobile homeowners have nowhere to go because we don't. If you're aware of our Section 8 program in our county.
No, tell us what that is.
Okay, so the Section 8 program is a voucher program where they will pay 2/3 of your rent if you qualify. Here's the problem. It takes
They
about
being the county?
it takes about 8 years to end up with a voucher.
Oh, wow. So
Yes.
Why does it take so long?
That is something I'd love to understand. I applied in 2016, and when I applied at that point, they told me they had not even opened the list to new recruits since 2008.
Oh, wow.
And I said, so what does that mean in terms of the people for 2016? When do you expect to see them get placement? And the answer was, well, we haven't finished the 500 from 2008. 8 years later, they hadn't finished the 500 from 2008. So that's not a viable solution for anyone.
Right.
An 8-year housing, perspective does not help anyone.
Right.
It will help those who are on the street now, which is great. They do make people that are actually homeless a priority. But as far as using this as a possible solution if we become economically evicted, it isn't. It's not a solution. And mobile home residents pay typically from, say, $450 in our county prior to this trend, about $600. $450 to $600 in that range was what it typically was.
For renting the space.
Right. Well, the goal of these predatory LLCs and these other groups is to go to market rate from purchase within 3 years.
What does that mean?
So in other words, if they purchase the park and the space rent is $450, within 3 years they expect to have that space rent to be $800.
Oh, so to double it.
Yes.
Now, well, I mean, they call these mobile home parks. Like, why can't they, someone just take their house to another park?
Because that usually means anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 to move it. Now, some of the smaller ones you can move a little cheaper. The only problem with moving them, especially the older metal ones, is you damage them when you move them. They're not meant to be carted around. They're not RVs.
Yeah.
The fact that they're called mobile homes is kind of misleading.
Yeah, it's kind of a misnomer there.
Right, exactly, because they're actually set up on the property. Now, we do have RV sections within our mobile home parks, but that's your typical Lucy and Ricky, hauling the RV trailer. It's not the same thing. We pay secured property tax on our homes. We have to maintain our homes. We have to pay for any type of major maintenance that occurs. Fire insurance, as you know, is becoming a crisis.
Right.
One of the problems with people purchasing mobile homes up in El Dorado County right now, not only the space rent increases, but the fact that they can't insure them.
Wow. So even the fire insurance is affecting our mobile home parks as well.
Absolutely, it's affecting our mobile home parks. Yes, it is. And we're not, on top of the fact that we can't afford our space rent, then when you go to renew your fire insurance, it's tripling. Now, I understand that people say, look at $450 to $600 and they go, well, those people don't really have any problems. Well, you have to understand that many of these people retired 20 years ago. Okay, so they based their decisions on the income that they would have available to them in their older years and how they would be able to manage. Except for now, with these types of increases, all of their equity is being eaten, and many have to sell and leave because they can't afford to go there. Unfortunately, some of the responses I have heard by legislators and people in government are, oh, well, they can always move in with their children. Or, oh, we'll just move back home with somebody. Can't they rent a room? Well, I don't know about you, but I bet your future goal is not to rent a room when you hit 55, 60, 65 years old.
Well, I know some people are probably thinking, well, I mean, renting a room, is really owning a mobile home in a trailer park like that much different? Is that, I don't think anybody is out there saying that, actually buying a mobile home is a good investment, but, what would you say to, somebody who's thinking that?
I wouldn't say they're bad investments. One of the trends to combat what's going on is what they call resident-owned parks, where residents get together, they find an investor who is willing to loan them, they do a buy-in, say $10,000 each, and in those parks, their rent increases are $5 a year. So it's kind of a co-op situation.
Yeah.
Now, those are working out great, but for instance, a circumstance in our county, in one of the parks where this has become a huge problem. One of the parks where as I was describing, last year was $149,000 for a double wide. This year is $99,000. Those losses make it very difficult for people to sell. They can't sell, they can't afford to stay, and now they don't know what to do. So that's when it starts to combat. Then you have to maybe go without a medicine or stretch it. You have to not put comp insurance on your car. You have to turn your heater down to 60 degrees instead of having it at 68. These are the decisions they have to face as these space rents go up. Now, most of them do not increase every 90 days with a 90-day notice.
But
Although
it could.
they could. They have the potential to do so. And some of these places, as I said, 13 months, an 18% increase. Well, if your income goes up 2.8% a year, how long do you stay in that home with 18% increases? You can't.
No.
No.
Now, I mean, what is the, upside for the new park owners who are, doing this? I mean, they're obviously just eventually going to drive all their business away, right?
Well, no, because they've switched gears to a different concept. In years prior, it was a mom and pop thing. It was a family oriented. They cared about the residents. They worked with them. They did things like that. What's current is let's see how much money we can make, how fast we can make it. And the goal is actually to sell it once they get the rents up.
Oh.
So usually within the 3 years, a lot of these corporations turn right around and sell it. By raising that space rent increases and by using long-term leases, in fact, one has done so in this county, a 25-year lease. And they intimidated residents into signing this lease, saying, quote unquote, if you don't sign this lease, we will increase your rent as often and as quickly as we can because you will not be protected by that. Well, the reason they did that is because they knew we were seeking space rent stabilization for the county. And they knew that if they signed those 25-year leases, that null and voided the space rent stabilization. Because if you sign a lease over 12 months, you are not eligible for space rent stabilization, and the park owners know.
Oh, wow. It's very tricky.
It's very tricky. So one of the things when we're working with the Board of Supervisors about the rent survey that they've asked us to gather for all the mobile home residents of El Dorado County, one of the things they are considering once we get them the statistics for this is putting in place what they call a interim space rent ordinance. This puts a rent freeze for 6 months in the county while the Board of Supervisors and the City Council examine the ordinance itself.
It's almost like an emergency holding. Like,
Yes, because once they know we're in the vicinity and we're making any headway, they start raising the rents.
Oh.
And it happens everywhere. And it is documented across the state and across the country as soon as they get a
as
little
high
whiff.
as it can before.
Right, before there's
anything
a
is-
freeze. You betcha. Now,
Wow.
some will say that we're not being considerate of the park owners and that we're not giving them a fair rate of a return.
Yeah, that was a question I had was, well, how do we know that, they're just not keeping with the market and, this is just, life. And, park owner or, mobile homeowners is just whiners who, want.
Exactly.
How do we know it's not that situation?
When you see the amount of money that has been offered for these parks, then you understand pretty quickly that the goal was never to keep the park as it was. They
Like when-
really sweeten the pot.
When these LLCs come in and purchase
Yes.
from your mom and
Yes, and they're quick to jump on families that have lost somebody. They're quick to get into an area where some of them have actually done this to the point where they've gotten rid of the residents, changed the land usage to something else that they could make more profits on. In El Dorado County, that's not valid because we don't have that kind of a situation. This is more, say, coastal or in tourist towns, things like that. But there are different techniques they use to take advantage of the purchase price. They make sure that the pot's really sweet when they walk in the door, and they never intend to stay. They make promises. We call it the honeymoon period. So for the first year, they buy it. Oh, they're fixing up the park. They're beautifying everything. Oh, we're gonna fix up your clubhouse. We're gonna do these special things. Well, they do these special things to justify more pass-through money. They keep wanting to raise the rent. So they find all kinds of different twists and techniques. But the goal isn't as it was before, which used to be, let's make this a pleasant place to live. Let's be supportive of our residents. We understand they're seniors on low income. We have disabled, we have vets. We have people in here, and the mom and pops cared about the residents.
Yeah.
We had this park, one of the ones that I keep discussing, and I try not to bring up names because we're not looking to cause any problems for anybody. But the residents actually made an offer. This owner said, we want a $300,000 deposit, and it's non-refundable. They wanted the seniors on top of the offer, the loan that they could have gotten to purchase the park. They wanted a $300,000 non-refundable deposit. So if the deal fell through, they were going to walk home with $300,000 of these seniors' money.
Oh, wow.
So less than 6 months later, they turned down the residents and sold it to somebody else for the exact same thing. So there's this us against them kind of thing, which is not what anybody wants, because there's a pass-through in all the ordinances, so that say a park ends up where a giant tree falls down and it causes damage to some kind of utility, and it's going to cost them a fortune to fix it. In these ordinances, they can request to increase the rent above whatever the agreed space rent stabilization percentage is for circumstances like that, because nobody thinks that the owners shouldn't, receive a fair rate of return, and that we believe that the owners, in circumstances where there's something that's going to be a pass-through charge, we understand that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're running a business.
Exactly. And we're okay with that. What we're not okay with is 18% in 13 months. We're not okay with now to move in this same park I keep talking about. It is now 3 times. They need an income of $2,400 a month to move into a mobile home park. That's ludicrous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who's the clients that it sounds like they're trying to push, the people in these mobile home parks who are there out now. Who is the clients that they're expecting to attract with such high rates and stuff?
Well, they're looking at what they keep talking about is market rate. Every time I get in a room, it's comparable to market rate. Mobile homes, and if you look in the housing element of El Dorado County, it will actually state in there, mobile homes were designed and are to be maintained as an affordable housing alternative for low-income people. It's not supposed to be market rate. These people aren't working anymore. They've retired 1 million years ago. If you retire today, you can probably afford $800 space rent. If you retired 20 years ago, no, you can't.
Yeah.
Another comment that I've heard, unfortunately by a legislator, which was very upsetting to me, was that mobile homeowners got what they deserve. They made poor choices in their lives, and that's how they ended up here. Okay, well, at 47, I became disabled. I've worked since I was 15. If anybody would have ever said I would end up disabled, I would have laughed hysterically. But I made the best decision I could with the income I was going to have for my future so I would not be dependent on
Right.
anyone else.
Yeah.
Those are this is the kind of people that are in these homes. And to say that we should be okay with market rate, well, how are we going to do that?
Yeah, I mean, and even if that is true, like it's still like, yeah, these are people though, in a bad situation. Like even if that's true, like that's not solving anything.
No. And in 90 days, if you get behind on your rent, they can start leaning that mobile home and owning it. And unfortunately, these predatory LLCs are extremely aware of that.
So would you say that that's their final goal? Because I mean, I'm trying to wrap my
Sometimes.
head around, like it just doesn't seem like a good business model
No.
to, be hiking these rates up, to the point where it doesn't even make sense that, it's so expensive to live in this mobile home park that, it's cheaper to go elsewhere. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. But if they're, now making it so that they get to own these other people's investments.
Exactly. And then a lot of times they change them from seniors to family parks. Then you can go for market rate. Then you're not looking at the same situation. And now seniors that are retiring at, say, 65 now, their income can probably afford an $800 space rent. But all of these mobile homes up here, most of these have been established in the 70s. These are not people who, you don't find many mobile home residents moving around. So once they buy a place, they generally stay there. And I have many, many people in my park living with an income of less than $1,000. You take it up to 800, where do they go? And with over 4,000 residents in El Dorado County, that's a lot of people. And we're doing a rent survey right now that we worked with the Board of Supervisors to design, to get the information that they want to decide to go forward. So this rent survey so far is starting to show us that at least, I think we have about 10 parks surveyed so far.
So what's the rent survey exactly?
Okay, so the rent survey talks about what your increases have been in the last 4 years, what utilities you used to have that you don't have, what you're paying for insurance, and what we're trying to show is, for instance, this park we were talking about that's $795. I looked at it 2 years ago to move into, and it was $545. So that's for a new resident. It's not quite as egregious for an old resident because they have a harder time doing that kind of a leap. They have to do it in increments.
Hi, I'm Rick Rowe, owner of Placerville Polaris and Power Tools. I've owned and operated Placerville Polaris since 2007. If you'd like to experience the off-road, or if you have property in our community, come on in. Let's see what we can build for you. We are your one-stop shop for off-road fun. We do it all, from building your dream toy to decking out your razor. We are complete with a full shop, and we proudly service all our products, including our power tools. We carry only the best top quality brands, and we have everything you need for taking care of your property and maintaining your 100-foot defensible fire space. Building off-road vehicles is a passion of mine that I take very seriously. I like to be personally involved in building your dream toy from start to finish. Here at Placerville Polaris, we do a lot of testing for the manufacturers to ensure you get the proper accessories to fit your specific needs. One of my favorite parts is test driving to maximize satisfaction and quality. Come on in. Let's see what we can build for you.
How do we fix this? Like, what's a solution here? Because obviously we want to protect our seniors and these people, who need that lower income housing, but also at the same time, we want to still keep it profitable, right?
Right.
I mean, like, if we just absolutely make it pointless for a mobile home park to be there, like, okay, whoever's owning that mobile home park can't make any money at all, then, no one's going to do that. So how do we walk that line?
Well, the hope is that we get space rent stabilization and we can motivate the county to go ahead and do an ordinance. The space rent survey that we are doing is basically to let the Board of Supervisors know what is going on in the county, and then they will then in turn be willing to spend the money to do the formal survey and to take a look at that interim ordinance. So what we really need is we have a little over 55 resident-owned parks in El Dorado County, and that goes from El Dorado Hills to South Lake Tahoe. What we really need is any resident in any of these parks we can get to fill out these rent surveys. We need 30% of the total parks in the county, and we need about 10 to 15% in those particular parks. So we're looking for some leaders, some people who are willing to get involved, some people who don't mind sitting on the phone for a minute and taking a survey, or going to their neighbors and taking a survey, or allowing me to come and sit in their living room and take a survey. We're really, right now, our biggest priority is for them to do that. But the other thing we look for is the Board of Supervisors and the City Council need to hear about what's going on from people. They see me plenty, and they've heard what I've had to say. But what we need is people out there telling their stories. We need people talking about the mother's home that they just had to move their mother out of and they couldn't sell. We need them talking about the problem they have selling to the next person, because all of a sudden the space rent that they were telling the prospective buyer is not actually the space rent that the prospective buyer is going to be paying. Because they naturally assume that it will be similar to what they're paying. And then when the prospective buyer finds out it's considerably more, then they lose the sale. And that's happening over and over. We need to hear about people who had their utilities included in their space rent, who are now having them all separated. We need people to let the Board of Supervisors know. We need them to let the City Council know. We need them to write letters to the editor telling people what's happening. We speak in the county at every chance we get, and I don't care what walk of life you come from. When you hear about what's going on to the most vulnerable citizens of our county, you're talking disabled, you're talking the vets, you're talking low-income family, you're talking seniors. These people, this matters to everyone I've spoken to, and it doesn't matter what you feel about the economy or politics or anything else. This is a situation that people see where the most vulnerable are being taken advantage of. And we really need people to contact us and get these rent surveys filled out so that we can get the Board of Supervisors and the City Council to say, yes, let's consider going forward.
So what information do they need from those surveys exactly? Like, why are those so important to be able to move forward?
Well, for one thing, one of the biggest things we face is apathy and fear. Those two things are constant.
From who?
The residents. They're afraid of making waves with management and ownership. They're afraid of being evicted because of it. So, for instance, recently we went to a park and we worked in this park for a good couple hours. We spoke to 40 people, asked them to fill out the rent survey. 3 did.
Wow.
And it doesn't matter if it's a park where there's the biggest problems. They're afraid.
Why do you think they're so afraid?
Because they think that it's not going to happen to them. Because it hasn't yet, or they haven't seen it yet. Now, when you're in a park where you're seeing these increases, but the problem is the mom and pop ones are the ones that are next. They're the vulnerable ones. They're the ones that these predatory companies seek out. They look for that aging parent and the younger siblings that don't want to take the park over. That's ideal for them. That's what they're looking for.
Oh, okay.
So, and unfortunately, I have received emails from local parks threatening me because I have tried to get rent surveys in the park, telling me that it's illegal. It is not illegal. In fact, it's perfectly legal. As long as I'm invited by a residence, I can do that all day long, and the park has
No, is that the management or?
management, ownership. Yeah, they sent me letters telling me I was not allowed to have anything posted in the park. I was not allowed to talk to any of the residents, and that's illegal. That isn't true. Unless this is a political thing, and this is not a political thing. We are doing something the Board of Supervisors have asked us to do as far as get this information for the space rent so they can decide whether they can go forward. And we need the residents to rally. We need them to get involved. Because if you think your park isn't next, you need to get online and take a look and see.
Circling back to why are these surveys so important, and why are residents so scared to fill them out? Like, is it, just a questionnaire about like, hey, how much are you paying?
It's
that it?
actually about a 4-year span of rent increases. It asks about insurance. It asks about some of your other costs, say your medical costs and things. Basically, what it's trying to see is it putting a burden on these residents, and can this and will this result in economic eviction for these people? And it already is. We already have mobile homes not selling. We already have people moving out in droves because they see it coming and they can't afford it. So they've asked us to get this information because, as in most things, government looks at money. And when we can show them how many residents are at risk and are already seeing these increases, then the board can connect the dots to how much this will cost them if we start landing on the street homeless. Which is what's going to happen, because we don't have an alternative.
Yeah.
There is no alternative for us. There is no place to go.
Yeah. I haven't looked at the renting market for a while, but, just for renting a room, do you know how much that is in El Dorado County?
About $600 to $700 to rent a room. Some of the less desirable housing, I'm talking metal roofs with tarps and such, you're looking at $1,200 and $1,600 to rent a house like that. Now, these people have been paying between $450 and say $650 rent space. Where are they going to go? Where in this county? Okay, so then we do have those apartments that do the third. There's 5-year waiting lists for those.
Yeah. And there's not that many single rooms for rent out there. If a whole population just suddenly gets dumped out into the renting market, it's like, no one's prepared for that.
No, I work, in fact, with an affordable housing panel in El Dorado County. And we are looking at a couple of different housing apartment complexes that we've gotten Mercy's involved in one, and I think Jim Barree's going to be involved in another. And those
who's those? Or who's that?
They're affordable. They're kind of affordable housing. They work trying to get communities affordable housing within them, and they want to do some apartment buildings. They haven't broken ground. Okay, so as it stands, there's nowhere for us to go. We have nowhere to go. And the solution of move in with your children or rent a room, these are grown adults who have worked their whole life. We're not asking for a mansion. We're asking for what we figured out we could manage.
Yeah. And a lot of those too, if they bought into the government telling them, you've been paying into Social Security and now, it's not delivering.
Exactly. And as you know, it affects all of us. The price of food, the price of gas, the price of utilities, everything is going up. Well, then on top of that, add the rent space and see that going up 20% on top of all the other things going up 5, 10, 15%, and then you make 2.8% increase every year. At what point do you become homeless? Rather rapidly.
Yeah.
And there's just nowhere to go. And we have no solutions in sight. One of the things they suggest is ADUs. I don't know if you're familiar with those. Those
No.
are
What's that?
what they call accessory dwelling units. And the county is actually working to negate some permitting fees, to lower some fees, to work with property owners in El Dorado County to add an additional building on your property.
For the purpose of renting out?
The purpose of renting out. The tiny house idea. I don't know if you knew, there's a lady up in Pollock Pines or Camino who's working on that.
Oh.
But here's the thing. You're still vulnerable to someone's whim on increases. So the whole idea of the mobile home situation was to have some control to allow lower income seniors, disabled vets, and people to remain in a place they could maintain and live. And now it's being taken away. And we don't know what to do. So that's why we're working so hard to try and get the county to listen to us and to see that this is a problem, and that if they don't help protect us, the recent rent control put through by the state does not protect mobile homeowners. We were eliminated from that.
So who in the county is in charge of making that this change to help
Well, I
our
mean,
mobile home people out?
the Board of Supervisors legitimately are in charge. We've been working with one person, John Heidel, has been really interested and really supportive and listening to what we have to say. And he helped us with this rent survey and said, you need to get me this, and then we can start. And we've been meeting with the others. But it's a slow progress, and we do realize that we need to get this rent survey done, because this we really feel is going to be what makes them understand how really important. But the statistics alone don't tell the whole story. If you don't look at what's happening across the nation and realize that this is a trend, that this is considered a hot new real estate market, that this is not something that's going to go away until the space rent stabilization starts to take effect everywhere. Truly, it should be done by the states. But we can't seem to get the states to pick it up. So cities and counties have to do this individually.
Yeah.
And in this state, we're at about 110 right now.
110 what?
Other cities and counties already having space rent stabilization. Sacramento County is starting. Amador County is starting. Tuolumne County is starting. Nevada County. So all the surrounding counties, that was one of the questions I had is, do you know of any other counties that are doing this? Yes. And all right around us, because everybody is dealing with this. And like you saw with the John Oliver thing, it is being touted as the new red hot market concept. They're captive audience,
Yeah.
and we got them.
Yeah, and I know for myself, I think one of the main purposes of government is to be, protecting those citizens who can't protect themselves, and those people who are, are elderly, retired veterans. Those are people who should be being protected, and if we're not doing that, then I think our government is failing those people that need the protection the most.
I agree, absolutely. We need the help. We're trying to fight it on our own. You can write letters, you can do all kinds of things, but unfortunately, without any kind of stabilization control, there's nothing we can do. They can take our home if we don't pay.
Can you explain the stabilization control a little bit more? Help people understand what that is exactly?
Okay, so what that does is it's basically a contract. They're generally about 30 pages, a lot of legal minutia in there, but basically, usually the standard one has about a 3% per year increase. Then it has what I was mentioning earlier, those pass-through. So if all of a sudden the entire sewer system in the park fails and it's going to cost them $500,000, not that they can charge the residents $500,000, but they can go to the county, write up a report, tell them what they need the increase for, and then the increases can be approved. So it isn't.
Do you know about how long that takes? I mean, because that ultimately shut down a mobile home park if it takes too long?
It hasn't happened. They're very careful about doing that because of the vulnerable residents in the mobile home parks, That has been one of the problems in the past with HCD, Housing and Community Development, the state-run governmental organization, had no teeth to help mobile home residents at one point. But then the state organization, GSMOL, which is Golden State Mobile Home Owners League, formed and organized, and they have a lobbyist, and they have put some laws into effect. AB 3066 now protects mobile homeowners. Unfortunately, none of it protects the rental situation. And I have spoken to GSMOL, and they are interested in the future, hopefully getting involved space rent stabilization. And of course, the cities and the counties would like the state to take it on, because truly that's where it needs to go, rather than individually
why do you say
fighting.
That better than, why is it better on the state level opposed to the county level?
Because as it stands now, each city and each county has to go to battle for this. Each one. That's why there's 110. So the city of Sacramento has to fight. The city of Rancho Cordova has to fight. Now, they can do a Sacramento County, but if you're an incorporated city itself, then you need an individual ordinance for your city. So to cover El Dorado County, we need parallel ordinances with the city of Placerville and the city of South Lake Tahoe to cover the entire county. So you can see, whereas if they just did a statewide, straight out space rent stabilization for mobile homeowners, it would make it so much easier on local legislators. It's expensive for the little cities and towns to take this on. It's an expensive project. It's not cheap, and that's why we get fought, why we're trying to do this, because they don't want to put out the money. And I understand that, because there's so many things that everybody needs, especially in our area with the fire danger and all the other problems we have. Obviously, there's lots to be concerned about. If the state would just take it on, recognize it, and go forward, then each grassroots organization wouldn't have to work for years trying to convince city councils and board of supervisors to take this on.
Now, on the state level, though, who decides what that rate should be for a certain area? Because I feel like the county could do a better job, once we have established, yes, we're doing this,
right?
That because even in El Dorado County, we're so different from El Dorado Hills to Lake Tahoe.
Totally different.
And a park, in this part of the county is probably going to have a different, standard set for it opposed to one in a different, another part of the county. So in that sense, I feel like the county would do better. Can the state actually do that on that big of a level?
I know what you're saying. You're talking about could they tailor it to the specific needs of each city and county? And the ordinances that we do individually are done that way. You're right. It might be harder to do it statewide. But you don't have to reinvent the wheel in this case. There's 110 of them. Take the best of those and call it good, in my opinion. I think there are simple ways to go at it, and I think there's an obvious need for it. It's just a matter of educating. I have to tell you that I have spoken to people from here to the state, and the resounding answer is, oh, that's not a problem. That only happens when the mom and pop sell, and they don't do that very often. I said, you're uninformed and sadly mistaken. That's not the truth. It's happening all the time. These mom and pop, they're chasing them. They're looking for those families. They're looking for those senior owners who are getting ready to pass on or retire and give it to the family who doesn't want to deal with the mobile home park anymore.
Do we know, or you have any statistics on how often this is happening?
No, because it varies from county to county and city to city, how many in each. I can tell you that the trend is strong enough to have 110 of them in place. And I can tell you 110 of the Space Rent Stabilization Ordinance is in place. And I can tell you that across this state, there is probably at least 50 city or counties going after it still now, seeking it. So everybody's looking to do it.
Yeah, so this isn't a here
No,
and there problem.
no,
It
this
is
isn't-
a consistent across the board problem.
Exactly. Well, the article from Time Magazine from December of 2017 was out of Akron, New York. And the problems they were having there.
Yeah.
And the fact that their owners, resident owners, were having, the people were having to walk away from their homes. So it's happening no matter where you are. And it seems to me that a lot of what they've done legislatively over the years with mobile home parks has seemingly been uniform or across the board. So why not do this? Uniform and across the board.
So let's say we, do enact a law in El Dorado County, and we establish it at, we'll just say 3%
Right.
increases per year, and then how do we know that's not hamstringing owners so that they're going to end up just shutting down the mobile home parks because they can't make ends meet? Like how do we know we're not going that too far?
Because that's been satisfactory for the previous owners. Okay, 3% is what they did. Most mobile homeowners will tell you that in years prior, they have seen $10, $15, $20 yearly increases in their space rent. And those mobile home park owners managed to do just fine. Also, again, I go back to the fact that if there is a problem and there is something they need to pay for, they can solicit the county or the city and ask for those funds, for that to be passed through as a rent increase. So that can happen. My suggestion to people who want to buy parks, don't sweeten the pot so much that you can't afford it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Don't pass your poor decisions on to
Right.
the poor renters.
Exactly. That's how we feel about it.
So if someone's watching this and they feel passionate about it, what can they do? Or let's say someone is in a mobile home park and they're worried about is my park going to be next? How can they prevent that?
Well, they can give me a call.
Okay.
Or email me.
Okay.
You can email me at TAMJAN, as in Nancy, IES, @gmail.com, or you can call me at 530-391-1423, and I can give you information. I can email you rent surveys. I can come out to your park and speak with you. I can come to a meeting and speak to your residents. And yes, I can be invited and I can speak in your clubhouse as long as you invite me and you invite the residents. I can come speak and I can tell you about what's going on. I can email you information. And if we can get this done here within the next few months, we hope to be able to put a interim ordinance in place, freeze the rents while the boards and city councils look at this, and pass the space rent stabilization.
Yeah, and circling back to that thing of doing the freeze rent, like that's a very immediate, important thing right now.
It's extremely important, and I have discussed it with the Board of Supervisors, and they are keenly aware of the possibility of, once this becomes somewhat more public, that the park owners are going to be aware, and they will start increasing rents.
Okay.
And they know that. So they understand our concerns, and they are talking to us about that interim ordinance as well.
Is there something that, our everyday people can help out with that in, helping to get that into place as soon as possible?
Absolutely. If they contact me and want to get involved in our organization, we would love that, because any help we can get, we need people talking to people in the parks. And then once we get them the rent survey, the completed one, we get on the agenda. We're going to be put on the agenda for the Board of Supervisors and for the City Council. Once we're on the agenda, I want every mobile home owner in this county that has concerns to write, to email, to make phone calls to your Board of Supervisors, to your City Council. Once we're on the agenda, please show up with us. The mobile home parks down in Southern California, and of course they have the population, we don't, show up in busloads. And boy, does that get the City Council and the Board of Supervisors' attention. But apathy is a problem. But I want people to understand that whether you've seen it and whether you really like your manager, if your manager is a senior, if your owner is a senior, and if your owner has younger people that are going to inherit it, it's coming for you too. It may not be there yet, but that is
It's a real possibility.
Right. That is the atypical person they look to go after. So don't get too complacent and don't be too comfortable, because thinking because you like your owner, that isn't the criteria, because his children get the park. And if his children don't want to do it and they come along with that big sweet honey pot, you're in the position I'm in now too.
One thing I want to bring up too is I think some people hear that term like affordable housing and, they immediately think like, oh, that's just, basically attract it for, like the dregs, like the lower people of society, like drug addicts and stuff like that. And, make people cringe like, oh, I don't want, lower income housing. But these mobile home parks, like that, they're not like that, right? Like that's
Some of these homes are $200,000. They're not cheap anymore. Most of them are manufactured. They're maintained, and I've heard people compare to renters, say in apartments, low-income, affordable housing apartment. Well, the difference is we have to pay to maintain. We have to take care of it. We don't have the choice. Parks don't let you leave your place looking shabby. Oh no, you get 7-day notices. You get enough 7-day notices because you haven't cleaned up, you start getting eviction notices. In mobile home parks, with the exception of a few, because there are a few in El Dorado County that are pretty run down. But most of these parks are well maintained. The homes are beautiful. They look just as nice as anybody else. We're paying money for them. And to say that these people haven't done right, well, they paid for their homes. They're not just renting, they paid for them.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. This is an investment. So we do care. And in many of the homes, honestly, it is beautifully maintained. Sure, you have riffraff, but in every neighborhood you live in, you have riffraff. But for the most part, honestly, I would say mental illness probably plays a bigger role in problematic situations in mobile home parks than I've seen anything else, honestly. There is a few of the drug things, but the nicer parks, residents are pretty catty about putting up with that kind of behavior. They don't like it. And they will do whatever they can to get that resident removed. So they take care of their own that way. But there are some parks that have that problem.
Yeah, so, you know, I just wanted to throw that out there to dispel any myths about, you know, like these are just attractants, you know, purely for, you like drug addicts, you know, people you wouldn't want, you know, living next to you and stuff like that.
No, our sidewalks roll up at 6 p.m. You're lucky to hear a sound. Our park is well maintained. The nicer parks down in Placerville are all well maintained. I could think of maybe a handful of parks that I could say, wow, are a little scary in this county. But for the most part,
But
these are investments.
You could find anything along those lines.
Yeah, and for the most part, these are investments, and you care about your investment, so you take care of it.
Awesome. So you want to tell us one more time where people can get a hold of you at?
Sure. My name is Tamara Janies. My email is TAM as in Mary, JAN as in Nancy, IES as in Sam, @gmail.com. My phone number is 530-391-1423, or you're welcome to visit our website at edmoc.org. Although there's nothing interactive on that site, there is some information. So we would love people to contact us, ask for rent surveys, be willing to get in the trenches with us and help do this work and convince some of their neighbors to take the rent surveys and help us get us passed so we can protect all these residents.
Great. Anything else you want to add before we close out here?
No, except for that I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and thank you for doing so.
Yeah, thank you for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
You bet.
Okay.
Thank
Have
you
a
so
good one.
much. You too.
Right. Thanks for watching, everybody. You can find us on Comcast Channel 7 up here in El Dorado County, or check our live stream online at youtube.com/foothill7tv, and we'll see you guys next time.
Hi, my name is Jeff Gutierrez, one of the owners of True Value Hardware on Missouri Flat Road. My parents are the original owners and bought the store 36 years ago. I grew up in the business and had my first day at 12 years old. The first customer I went up and asked for help, he said, "Yeah, go get someone older." I still get that response today, but now it's a compliment. Steel and John Deere are rated the best in their respective industries. And here at True Value, we have the benefit of carrying and being the local dealers for both of those products. I've always looked at being a salesman as you got to love what you sell. If you love what you sell, it's not gonna feel like it's a job. You're just getting the right equipment for the customer. The great thing about our store is you can do everything through the store here. We have a repair shop, we have rentals. If you don't know how to use it, we go over everything when you rent the product. I myself am a new homeowner, so I am getting an idea of everything that I need for home renovations. Everybody's got a different job, and we want to be a part of that job and help them through that job. It's very important for us to have a happy staff. Our staff is an extension of us. We support a lot of families through this business, and that's what I love. I love it when a customer comes in and says, "Hey Jeff, I need this," or "Hey Brian, I need this." It kind of warms my heart to know that our store has such a footprint in the community. We try to support our community in many different ways, and one of those ways is through donations. We definitely help out all of the local schools. We support Relay for Life, local youth sports, Eagle Scouts, Toys for Tots, many different organizations. It's important for us to be a part of the community and to really make an impact in people's lives.